What's up, guys? We're back with another educational video, and this week we're talking about a new study that came out looking at the effect of the ketogenic diet on people with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. But first, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment for the algorithm. I got sent this new study from several people of the low-carb ilk, and it's very interesting study. They took people who were diagnosed with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, and they put them on a ketogenic diet for 4 months. The TLDR is that they saw significant improvements in their symptoms of schizophrenia and bipolar. In fact, I think overall the effect was like a 30-some% improvement in these scores. And of course, overreaction theater. The ketogenic diet is the cure for all neurological disorders. Let's just slow our roll here, because if we look at the human... Wait a second. Study! Because it wasn't randomized, it wasn't a control trial. I'm going to point out some limitations. I'm not saying it's a bad study. I'm saying we have to limit the application and interpretation of said study. They put these people on a ketogenic diet for 4 months, and the average weight change was a 10% reduction in body weight. That is very clinically significant. And the average overall weight was like a 10-kilo drop. Now, they stratified them into adherent and semi-adherent, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if I've ever heard of a study do that. In fact, when I was reading the study, I'm like waiting to see the comparison to the control group. And then I realized, oh, there is no control group. They just said, okay, you guys were really adherent and you guys were semi-adherent, and they stratified them. Now, looking at the overall data is still very strongly suggests that there was lots of improvements. So they were kind of taking this from the approach of these neurological disorders may actually be disorders of metabolism in brain cells, and impaired glucose metabolism and those sorts of things could lead to these disorders. Now, it's very difficult to disentangle this because overall, these people's BMI was an average of 34, which means most of them were obese and overweight. And there is a high correlation between obesity, BMI, and these neurological disorders. Now, you can make the chicken or the egg argument, which is, okay, metabolic dysfunction is causing obesity, which is also causing these neurological disorders, or they become obese, creating metabolic dysfunction, and that is causing these disorders, or perhaps all these things happen in tangent and they're not causing each other. If we look through the metabolic changes, we see improvements in just about everything. Shocking, because they lost 10% of their body weight. So their BMI improved, their blood pressure improved, waist circumference dropped, their visceral adipose tissue dropped, their fat mass obviously dropped quite a bit. In fact, I think the average loss of fat mass was like a 17% reduction in fat mass. They also lost a little bit of skeletal muscle mass, but that's kind of to be expected if you're dieting and not resistance training. Their HbA1c dropped, their LDL did increase, and their ApoB did increase. And, again, some people will say, well, LDL doesn't matter. Nobody will disagree that ApoB doesn't matter. We know that ApoB is the part of LDL that damages the endothelium. It is part of what creates the initial insult to the endothelium and allows cholesterol to penetrate the endothelium and accumulate there. ApoB went up, their HDL went up, their triglycerides went down. So, a lot of positive effects on metabolism. Their HOMA-IR improved as well. So overall, I would not argue that this was, even though the LDL went up, overall, they're definitely metabolically more healthy. If we look at their depressive symptoms, they were reduced overall by 33%. Anxiety went down by about 9%. Their severity of mental illness decreased by about 31%. And their quality of life improved by 17%. And their sleep disturbance scale improved by like 19%. So hey, a lot of improvements here. But there's one problem with saying that the ketogenic diet caused this. We can't disentangle that from the fact that these people lost a significant amount of body weight. And we know that many of these metabolic changes will happen if you just lose that amount of overall body weight. And I've got to say, one of the authors, Westman, I think it is a very staunch advocate for the ketogenic diet. I mean, I would consider this guy to have made some very non-evidence-based statements in the past on Twitter. And I did think it was really interesting in the discussion, they highlight exercise has not been shown to improve symptoms of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, and they cite a study that showed no improvement. So I went to the study, and if you look at the study, it showed no improvement because none of their blood markers improved. They didn't get metabolically more healthy. And then I wondered, is that the only study? And it turns out there are numerous human randomized control trials and meta-analyses showing that exercise does, in fact, significantly improve symptoms of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, which leads me to wonder, why did they point out this particular study, one study where there was no metabolic improvement, and omit several meta-analyses and human randomized control trials where it showed improvement? Well, probably because it reduces the strength for their argument that the ketogenic diet is somehow special. So honestly, that gives me a lot of pause. Maybe I'm overinterpreting that. But when I see them pick a study that's 11 years old and stands in isolation and not cite meta-analyses on the subject, or at least say, in this study they didn't see it, but in this study they did, and not talk about that, that seems very strange to me. Why would you not do that? What is my takeaway from this study? My takeaway from this study is the ketogenic diet can help reduce body weight and improve metabolic health. That may have an effect on improving schizophrenia, improving bipolar, depression, but we already know this. We know this. We have the studies. We've shown that weight loss in general improves these things. We've shown that exercise in general improves these things if you become metabolically more healthy. Is it possible the ketogenic diet has some sort of unique effect? Sure, it's possible, but you can't determine that from this study, because in order to determine that from this study, they would have had to have a control arm of people doing a non-ketogenic diet intervention where they're eating the same calories and preferably protein as well, and see similar reductions in body weight, which if it's controlled appropriately, they would see similar reductions in body weight, because we know that if you equate calories and protein, you don't see more weight loss in the ketogenic diet. If they equated those and still showed that the ketogenic diet had better results, then you can claim that there is something unique about the ketogenic diet, but you cannot claim it based on this paper. My take home is what I have been saying for, 15 years. Which is, choose the diet that allows you to maintain or achieve a healthy body fat level. Whatever diet makes it easiest for you to do that is likely the diet that is going to be best for you, the individual. That is why our app, Carbon Diet Coach, does not pigeonhole you into high carb or low carb or ketogenic or plant-based or balanced. We give you all those options because we know that the best diet is going to be the one that you can adhere to. If a few randomized control trials come out and they show that the ketogenic diet is superior, then I'll revisit this and talk about it. This just doesn't show that. It just doesn't show that. It shows that if you get more metabolically healthy, you have improvements in schizophrenia and bipolar and some other mental health disorders. What I would say, for those of you out there struggling with mental health, what you do in the body affects the mind. And what you think, your thoughts in your mind, affect the body. Just look at the data on pain, and you see people who have more anxiety, who have more psychological stress, have a lower tolerance for pain. They feel more pain. They're more likely to have chronic fatigue. They're more likely to have autoimmune disorders. They are more likely to have chronic pain. People with less psychological stress, less likely to have those things. What happens in the mind affects your body. And people who exercise are less likely to have depression. What happens in the body affects the mind. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you're interested in our coaching app, make sure you click the link in the description, sign up for Carbon Diet Coach, less than $10 a month for customized nutrition recommendations, as well as week-to-week coaching and changes. You can't beat it. I'll catch you guys next week.